Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. If you are writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. Excuse me. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13, so if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. The story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last two stories we heard. The title of this story is Elloni's Pride, and today we are reading chapter 13 out of book 1. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now let's start. Elloni's Pride, Book 1, Breaking Point. This is Chapter 13, Taking a Breath. Now that the enemy dragons were out of sight, Browser had Dronsnai douse any remaining fires, and the king once again got a count. It seemed that he had lost 6 soldiers from the falling pieces of Kingdom Wall, and he had lost 3 families, which equaled 15 people. At that point, he thought the witch was right, and the universe was smiling. No, they didn't have a kingdom or homes, but they had lives, and that was more important. Elloni paused once again, and Libya once again went to her. I feel strange, Elloni thought. I feel empty and in a darkness. I feel like I've lost my rider, but my rider was not someone I knew. Libya rubbed her neck as she looked at Baldian. Libya thought, I'm here. You've not lost me, and we still have day to go. It won't be dark for several hours. Elloni leaned down and gently puffed a breath in Libya's hair. I know you are with me. These feelings are a disconnected feeling. I believe they are feelings from my larger pride, but I don't know. Felicity fluttered over. We read many things about your connection to your smaller pride and to the larger pride, as the leader of both. We will reread things once we settle down in the forest past the meadow. But I fear right now the larger pride is under poisonous potions. That is why you feel the darkness they are in. I can look around you and know that you are not in darkness or the emptiness, so it has to be the feelings of the larger pride, as you surmised. I know my thoughts feel like they're going in a circle here, but I don't often dare to tread in the negative. And, well, you might not want to connect right now. At least not until the dragons are no longer under the potions. We don't know if they can find you with the connection. Felicity paused. Maybe the positive here is that you can find them and guide them into the light, but they cannot come to you on their own. Libya looked at Felicity, and then she looked at her 3 dragons. Then suddenly she had an image of black dragons all around her, as she remembered the stories her sister and the rest of her family told her of the soldiers and the dragons visiting their village. Her ma and pa told stories of when the dragons looked more like her 3 dragons, with bright, beautiful colors. But her family told her of King Damontade's black dragons that visited, and the dragons sounded scary, as she could remember hearing them roar when she was in the cellar. As Libya saw the scene, one part of the conversation came alive for her, and that was living in emptiness and darkness. Suddenly, she didn't feel scared of the dragons. She felt sorry for them. It was like they were living in a cellar with no family to come down and visit them. The black dragons were lonely, and they wanted their family and friends back. But because of the potions that poisoned their minds, they didn't know how to find them anymore. Libya stroked Elloni's neck, and she focused so that her thoughts only went to her 3 dragons. Mostly she focused on Elloni. Don't lose them. They need to know we're here. You are their leader, so lead them out of their darkness. We discussed potions being a one-time thing or a many-time thing, and we had no answers. But I think we have to lead them away from King Diamantade, and then the darkness will go away. Lead them out of their cellars, down their escape tunnels. Elloni leaned her head down and nuzzled Libya, and then once again the group continued. After a while, Browser decided to land Dronsnide to the east of the kingdom and west of the pond near the village. He didn't want to land on anyone, so he flew farther away from the kingdom. Then he thought to himself that the enemy had flown away. Do you sense any dragons? He thought to Dronsnide. No. I'm dropping the invisibility charm, at least until we land, thought Browser. Then Dronsnide lowered himself to land, and they saw a few people speckled on the grass, much to the west of them. So Dronsnide flew a little closer. When Browser could tell where the people were, he had Dronsnide land. Once the people started seeing some of themselves again, they started to panic. But then they saw Dronsnide and Browser and relaxed some. And they also dropped the charms they had on themselves, and it was comforting to see so many people. As Dronsnide landed, Browser saw people to his east as well. Then he remembered Commander Curveston was bringing the village troops to help. He didn't know how far it was to their hiding place, but he knew it was at least a 2-hour walk to the trees. And with all the families and children, it might take even longer. Both Commander Quilly and Commander Curveston headed towards him, which for Commander Quilly, that was still south, down the line of kingdom people, and for Commander Curveston, that was his same western path. Are you running low on magic? Asked Commander Quilly. No. Well, that's not why I stopped the charm, replied Browser. I didn't want to land on people. Yes, we felt the wind from your dragon before we saw you, stated Commander Curveston. We weren't sure what that meant, but then you turned visible. When you turned visible, you were very close to us. I didn't even notice you when I dropped the invisibility at first, replied Browser, because I was only expecting people near the kingdom wall. Yes, but if the enemy dragons come back, we will only have seconds to cast the charms again, stated Commander Keeley. Browser motioned to Dronsnide. He can sense them before we see them, and I prefer to see the people go in the woods instead of guessing or whatever you were doing before. Commander Keeley smiled at a woman and reached out and touched her arm. Then he rubbed the head of the child she carried. We just felt for them, but I prefer to see them too. That way I don't miss the children. She smiled back and then continued walking with the rest of the kingdom people. It was really good of you to come help us, Commander Curveston said to Browser. Yes, indeed, agreed Commander Keeley. Except that I'm the reason King Diamantade attacked, replied Browser. No, I wouldn't say that, stated Commander Keeley. His attacks were much less once he captured you, and he did often adhere to the treaty, but we're accused of harboring the new batch of linkers. We're accused of knowing where the dragon eggs are. We're accused of deceitfully reporting our progress and thus cheating King Diamantade of his taxes. There's always a reason for him not to adhere to the treaty. How did you get him to agree to a treaty in the first place? Asked Browser. We gave false information on your whereabouts, but then he captured you. So we told him that our information was good and true, so he had to sign the treaty. Because how else would his men have known where to find you? Besides, where else was he to get food if he couldn't tax us? Browser shook his head. And then he looked at all the kingdom people walking from the north to the south. He wanted to hurry up and find Bradley, but for now, he would stay with these people. Bradley looked around at his group, and he reached out his hand and rubbed Hagar. Lots of things are happening right now, and my pa wants me to check on our village, but I need to rest. He thought a little and then said, rest my mind is what I mean. Let's walk, and I'll explain some things to you. Roman pulled out some dried meat as they sat, and he offered some to Coulter. Now as they stood, he handed the rest to Bradley, and Bradley gladly ate it. After they got up and stretched a few minutes, they started heading east. They were still deep in the woods. There are lots of things, started Bradley. First, the bundles. We need to fix them to carry on our backs or something. He motioned to Broman's rope tied around his waist, like you carry your knife on your belt. And then, of course, shoes. We need to use the leather to make some shoes. He motioned to Coulter. I believe my pa added leather to your bundle, or he planned on it anyway. That's the physical stuff. Physical? Asked Coulter. Broman grabbed his arm to demonstrate. Stuff you can feel, he said. Then he looked at Bradley. Right? Right, replied Bradley. Then there's the mind stuff. Bradley touched his own head. Hagar thinks something to us. Like what? Thought Hagar. That's perfect. There's a witch. A witch! Exclaimed Coulter as he became scared. She's good, replied Bradley. Her name is Soflin, and she's taught me some charms. I wanted Hagar to think with us so you could feel the difference between speaking and thinking. I can cast the charm to think, and I can make it two-way. But I want you boys to learn these charms as well, and after that I'll teach you an invisibility chart. Invisibility? Said Broman. Like, what did Pa say? In means not, so not visibility. Or not, how do you change the word? Not visible, like not able to see. But Pa said the dogs smell you. Bradley raised his eyebrows. That's a great idea, Broman. I'll ask the witch for that word later. Not smellable. That would be good. My ma and Pa taught us some of how to write. So I want to write some of this down, and then I will ask for the additional word. Right? What's that? Asked Coulter. It's designs, stated Broman. My pa made designs on leather and bark, and he told me that there were designs to write words. He showed me with a few. He showed me a few with some sticks, and some of his designs had, what was that other word? Oh, letter. Does that sound right? He looked at Bradley, and Bradley nodded his head. Some of Pa's designs had letters hidden in them, and I had to find the letters. Again, you have another good idea, stated Bradley, as he spotted several pieces of bark lying on the ground near the trunk of a tree. Some animal must have found some bugs under the bark, but here are several pieces. How did your pa write on the bark? And Broman pulled out his knife with this. Then he glanced warily at Hagar. Don't get any ideas of burning the bark. Hagar shook his head. Me no get any ideas. Bradley nodded his head as he thought. Let's gather the bark, and then when we stop, we can write or carve some things. They gathered the bark and stuffed it into the bundles. Then they continued walking. Bradley started teaching them the words to the charms. Coulter kept scrunching up his face and saying the words sounded funny, and Broman said it was too many words to remember. After a while, Hagar thought, I know a word. Vitertmar. Broman said, what does that mean? Vitertmar. Fire erupted into space before him, and he jumped back. He looked around to find the source of the fire. Then he looked at Hagar. Does it mean fire? I don't know, thought Hagar. It just popped in my head. But you breathe fire, stated Bradley. Maybe if you say it while you're breathing it, you can direct your fire or make it stronger. Maybe. But Brahmin no like me breathing fire, even when I try to help, thought Hagar. Bradley glanced at Brahmin and his short hair on the left and soot still smudged on the right. He said, well, we'll find a place for you to practice where you won't scorch your linker and you won't catch the woods on fire. I trying to wait, thought Hagar. Bradley decided that he would give them one word at a time, and as he gave the words, the meanings just started coming to him. So he gave the meanings due, which didn't always help Coulter. Hushman looked around his group. I'm no longer receiving thoughts from the group. How's everyone? Did anyone send too much magic? Sylvie shook her head. No, and I have a mind to send some to Libya and Lydia. I just sent to a stranger, so why not my own daughters? Hilda looked at her and then at Hushman. And Bradley. We should send to him, too. Hushman looked around the group. I think it's time to tell some of the old stories. He paused to let everyone settle down to listen, and then he continued. There used to be people who lived outside of the village, and the people called them holders. My pa told me that the linkers wouldn't have done near as much without them. Of course, as a boy, I didn't believe that part. I listened to the stories of all the heroics of the linkers, but I wasn't interested in someone sitting in a cave or a mountain, someone who just sent magic. That didn't sound so interesting. But now, he let the thought trail off. I was told the same stories by my ma, stated Sylvie. She whispered them to us and told us that those were better days. Those were days when magic flourished. Those were the days when linkers protected the balance between the village people and the power-hungry kings. And now magic has returned, stated Kala. What words did Browser use? Why did he need so much magic? Oshman nodded his head once, and then he went to Stan. Let's walk and talk, and I'll tell you about the communication that I was partaking of. They all stood and started walking. Kempton got the attention of the young ones, and he rolled the pine cone he had worked on ahead of them. The little girls giggled and ran after it. The little boys dashed ahead of them to get there first. Then the first one accidentally kicked it even farther. Hushman looked up at the sun. We need to watch our direction and not just follow the pine cone, he said, and the rest understood. Then, as they walked, Hushman thought to Kosher, Kala, Kempton, Thilda, and Sylvie. He thought to them all the thoughts that he received, including Browser's thoughts of the dragons flying into the buildings and the kingdom walls. Then he thought what he thought of the events. The two mothers didn't send magic to their children, but when they stopped for lunch or supper, they would remember then and send. Kala wanted to send magic to her two sisters as well, but she too would wait until she was sitting down, and she would get Kosher to also send. But right now, they listened to Hushman's thoughts and tried to imagine what it had been like in Dripston Kingdom, and realized that huge chunks of stones falling on their heads was much worse than sitting with their backs to a fire while watching their homes burn. After Soflin had left the communication between the commanders, Browser and Bradley, she and Lydia started walking again. Now Soflin and Lydia came to the edge of the trees, and Soflin taught Lydia the words to slide across the meadow quickly. We will stop at the tall grasses so we can check on each other, and then we will continue in a straight line north. North? Asked Lydia. King Damontate lives in the north. He lives north of Underwood Village, but he is not north of us. He is probably southeast of us. Oh, okay, said Lydia, though she still wasn't sure. We will slide to the tall grasses or the plains and stop briefly, and then we will continue north to the next set of trees. Then you will have to connect to nature again and find your dragon. My dragon was in his cave. He moved out of the cave and explored a bit, but then he went back. I think he's sleeping right now because the pictures I see are just blackness. Soflin nodded. She was pleased that the universe had also provided Lydia. Who knew? Maybe all the Linkers were in Underwood Village. But then she thought of all the people in Dripston Kingdom and Capstan Village who could do magic. She wondered if King Faterite had taught magic during the last few years, or if he was just open to it, and thus his people were open to it. Either way, or however it was, the universe was definitely letting the magic flourish and operate in all those people, and Soflin could easily imagine the world once again where magic was abundant and used instead of feared by all the people. They started sliding across the meadow. Lydia lost her balance at first, but Soflin caught her hand for a few minutes and steadied her. They smiled at each other and continued sliding. Soon they were to the tall grasses, and everything was the same. So Soflin told Lydia a few different words, so they could slide through the tall grasses but not go as rapidly. Then once again, the meadow opened up, and they slid at the faster speed. Soflin watched the skies. Well, they were in the open, but everything seemed quiet. She felt King Damonte was stewing. She hoped that King Faterite's people made it to their hiding place, and King Damonte's soldiers didn't find them. And then she thought on Underwood Village, and wondered how many were there. She still had her charm on the village, but there didn't seem to be a lot of movement. Finally, they came to the trees and stopped sliding. They entered the trees and sat down to let Lydia connect with nature and with her dragon. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 13. I know this was a short chapter, but you see we had a lot of action with the enemy soldiers attacking Kingdom in the previous chapter, and now we checked in on all our groups. In a way, it was resting, and in a way, it was tying up some loose ends, or at least bringing some threads forward. Leave a comment on Coulter's thoughts of Bradley's funny words and visibility. We don't think of that as funny, but if you never heard it before, it would be funny. Leave a comment on if you've ever seen letters hidden in designs before. Did you have to, do you see this letter at the time? I know they have those ones for numbers online where it's all like dots and stuff, and the colored dots, and then you can see like a 12 or a 5 or something. So I know that I've done that recently with numbers, but leave a comment on if you've seen hidden letters in designs before. Also, leave a comment on if you ever helped a child or someone learn their letters or learn how to read. Did you ever cut vegetables into letters for the kids? Or maybe you gave the kids alphabet soup or something. Maybe you spelled a child's name on his or her birthday cake and showed them their name. Look at your name. This is your name. And did they recognize the letters on the cake and stuff? Why am I asking this? Well, you can weave in things that happen in your life into your stories. Take a piece here and take a piece there, put them together. You have a start of a story, or you have a link between scenes. Children are fun to watch. They look at the world with such wonder. We look up in the sky and we see clouds. Children look up in the sky and see dinosaurs. You can get a lot of ideas from children, and their innocence is also fun to write into your stories as well. Kind of where Hagar has got some of that innocence, and also Coulter, he's been sheltered. He doesn't know a lot about the outside world, so he has some of that too, even though he's about 6, which 6-year-olds still have innocence. So it's just fun to add this stuff to your stories. Join me Tuesday for Writing Prompt with Your Cave. This will be part 9. Also, leave a comment on if you added to your cave all 8 previous times. Or, even better, if you added in between when we were adding to it. So you had a part 8 and a 8.5 or something like that, or part 3.5. So, maybe you had some ideas in between and you just had to type them in. That would mean you are having fun like I am. Join me Friday for chapter 14 of Elloni's Pride, Breaking Point, Hidden Linkers. Visit my website, bymckella.com, and read some character bios. If you read some, leave a comment on which ones you've read. I hope to start adding more bios to the website as well, but we may have to get through Christmas first. I know this isn't coming out till later, but right now it's like the weekend right before Christmas, so I'm a little bit busy. But I should be adding bios to the website in January. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so that you can continue to write with me and we can write together. We can have fun. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.